I'm Thalia, Assuras, saying farewell. Sharon Alfonsi reports on a day of tributes for the victims of the Virginia Tech shootings. Legal loophole. A criminal record could bar you from buying a gun. Why not a history of mental illness? Randall Pinkston digs into that. Administration figures under pressure. Joey Chen has the latest on whether two top presidential proteges can hang on to their jobs. And class divide. Was it the accent or the gum? Sheila McVicker on what may have done in the royal romance.
This is the CBS Evening News with Thalia Assuras.
Good evening, everyone. Monday's tragedy at Virginia Tech continues to cast its long shadow over the nation this weekend. Families said goodbye to their loved ones at funeral services today as questions flew over how the killer could have amassed his arsenal in the first place. We begin our coverage with Sharon Alfonsi in Blacksburg.
He was a bandmate and brother to hundreds. Ryan Clark, one of the first victims of Sung Hee Cho's violent rampage. Today, he was buried in Georgia, his bandmates serenading him one final time. In Richmond, the Hill family said goodbye to their only child, Rachel, just 18 years old.
You never think you'll have to pick out funeral clothes for your daughter. You think it's going to be a bridal dress.
In Blacksburg, Austin Cloyd should have been celebrating her 19th birthday Monday. Instead, classmates went to her funeral, as they did for Emily Hilscher, killed in her dorm room. Police are trying to determine why Cho targeted her first, if there was any connection between the two. Investigators are looking through Emily and Cho's email and cell phone records for clues. Cho's records could also reveal whether or not he warned anyone about the shooting. An affidavit states that Cho made regular calls home on Sunday evenings. Cho's relatives said they had no idea he was capable of that kind of violence. They issued a statement. "We are humbled by this darkness," they said. "We are living a nightmare."
I think his parents are suffering and grieving too, and it just seems from everything that has come out is that he was a sick individual.
At Virginia Tech today, hundreds are trying to heal, caught between mourning and trying desperately to move on.
I think people can forgive, but it takes a long time.
And a tribute to those killed continues to grow at the center of campus, and they have added a marker now for the gunman. Leaning up against it, a single note of forgiveness. This university demonstrating nothing but dignity the entire week. Thalia?
Well, what's it like on the campus this weekend?
Well, many students have gone home to be with their families, but there are a lot of alums here, even some parents. They felt like this is where they need to be. Tech is expecting thousands of students to return on Monday when classes resume.
Sharon Alfonsi, thanks so much. And the tragedy is raising plenty of questions about the effectiveness of background checks. Randall Pinkston on that.
Federal law is supposed to prevent people with severe mental illness from buying guns, but it didn't stop Sung Hee Cho.
He should have been not qualified to be able to buy a gun.
We'll run a background check.
Mental health information does not get into the FBI's National Instant Background Check system because many states don't report it, often because of privacy concerns.
There is no penalty for any of them not to put any information in there.
26 states withhold specific mental health information from the FBI's database. 5 others only provide limited information. Another problem? The law's broad language, which denies guns to people adjudicated or judged mentally defective or who are involuntarily committed.
Does that mean somebody who's been convicted of a criminal charge? Does that mean somebody who's been civilly committed? That's never really been fully defined.
The data gap has resulted in tragedies before. 2004, Lynbrook, New York. Father Larry Penzas and a parishioner were shot dead during a mass. Deacon Neil Squitieri was there.
He kept saying, "Neil, I'm hit. Neil, I'm hit."
The gunman, Peter Troy, had been committed to a mental institution a year earlier, but was still able to buy a rifle.
We have to make it better, the system, where people like Troy and Cho do not fall through the cracks.
Congresswoman Carolyn McCarthy is trying to close the loophole with legislation that would force states to give the FBI mental health information.
Certainly I know what the victims' families are going through.
McCarthy's husband and 5 others were killed on a New York commuter train by Colin Ferguson, who had also been treated for mental illness.
A lot of people will say, you know, if they're bent that they're going to get their hands on a gun, they're going to get it, and I probably would agree with them. But why are we making it so easy for them?
McCarthy has introduced her bill 3 times in the past 5 years. Twice it's been passed in the House, only to stall in the Senate. Thalia?
Thank you, Randall. A jet from the Navy Blue Angels demonstration team crashed today during an air show at a Marine Corps base in Beaufort, South Carolina. 1 person was killed. The F-18 Hornet reportedly clipped power lines just before crashing. It is not known if there were any casualties on the ground. In Iraq, the Sunni chairman of Fallujah's city council was assassinated today, and 3 more U.S. soldiers were killed. Our Mark Strassman has just returned to Iraq for another tour of duty covering the war. He gives us his impression of what's changed.
Iraq's mindless chaos goes on. Iraqis have had it, and increasingly, so has Washington. This week, U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates put it bluntly to Iraqi leaders: the clock is ticking.
Our commitment to Iraq is long-term, but it is not a commitment to have our young men and women patrolling Iraq's streets open-endedly.
On Baghdad streets, a security surge by U.S. troops is making headway. The city's murder rate has dropped by half, although across Iraq, attacks still kill dozens of people every day. But on major issues, Iraqi politicians are getting nowhere. Look at their report card. No progress at all on a new oil revenue sharing plan, on political reconciliation, putting members of Saddam's former political party back to work, or controlling the militias. There's little chance Iraqi leaders will take full control of their army anytime soon, or hold provincial elections as promised by June. So when Iraqis read headlines about the Gates visit and warning, they're not impressed. This Iraqi says, we're fed up with our government's promises and those of the U.S. There is no government, he says. No one can protect us. Then again, the Iraqi parliament can barely protect itself. Not when a suicide bomber can sneak right into its cafeteria. And that was inside the fortified green zone. For lawmakers, a taste of what many Iraqis still struggle with every day. The U.S. still hasn't given the Iraqi government any explicit deadlines. But Secretary Gates told Iraqi lawmakers not to break for their summer vacation unless they've made real progress. In itself, something of a deadline. Another way of saying time and U.S. patience are running out. Mark Strassman, CBS News, Baghdad.
It used to be that in the old Soviet Union, you could tell whether a politician was in or out by how close he was standing to the party leader. These days, Washington seems a bit like that, except the clues might be found in the guest list for a big D.C. dinner tonight. Joey Chen has more from the White House.
It's the hot parlor game of the moment inside the Beltway. Which of the president's men will be forced out first? His longtime friend and legal counsel, Attorney General Alberto Gonzales, or World Bank Chief Paul Wolfowitz, an architect of the Iraq War.
One thing that these two cases have in common is that they're both drags on the president at the time that he definitely needs someone to give him a lift.
The controversy surrounding the two men couldn't be more different. Gonzales' sketchy answers to Congress about why 8 U.S. attorneys were fired,
Sir, I don't recall when the decision was made,
have spiraled into serious questions about his competence. Wolfowitz is in trouble for getting his girlfriend a big promotion and a huge raise after he took charge of the World Bank. Protesters and employees who are infuriated by Wolfowitz's management style want his head. The bank board begins an urgent investigation next week, which could end in his ouster. The White House is stuck with both men, and with a stock answer.
The president does have full confidence in Paul Wolfowitz. As I've told you, the president has full confidence in the Attorney General.
For the White House, it's a serious distraction.
It's very difficult for the president to start something proactively. He's constantly on the defensive, being asked about current or former administration members.
But the president is famed for his loyalty and his determination not to let his critics decide who stays or goes. So even in the face of this week's bipartisan pummeling of Gonzales on Capitol Hill and calls from top Republicans for the Attorney General to leave, Mr. Bush shows no sign he will give up.
I think probably there's a sense that if the Attorney General goes, the administration is going to be hurt. But frankly, the administration is hurt in any case.
The Attorney General is toughing it out, too, even under very awkward circumstances. Tonight is the White House Correspondents' Dinner, a big social event here. Mr. Gonzalez says he'll be there. So, too, Thalia, will the president.
Joey Chen at the White House, thanks so much. And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, abortion and politics. What this week's Supreme Court decision could mean for Campaign 08. Republican presidential hopefuls were quick to support this week's Supreme Court decision upholding the ban on so-called partial birth abortions. Many were making the rounds today in South Carolina, which has already banned the procedure. Michelle Miller has more.
The reaction to the decision fitted into predictable party lines and signaled that the abortion issue would play a central role in the 2008 presidential race. For some candidates, that could present a problem.
Candidates may be forced to take, again, more clear positions.
The leading Democrats support abortion rights, and candidates Clinton, Obama, and Edwards were quick to denounce the decision.
What message does it send when the Supreme Court decides that women's health doesn't matter?
But some Republicans are tweaking their stands on the issue, at least for primaries in conservative states like South Carolina. Here's Republican Rudy Giuliani in 1989.
I support a woman's right of choice.
And here's Giuliani's press release on Wednesday. Quote, "The Supreme Court reached the correct conclusion. I agree with it." Mitt Romney in 2002.
So when asked, will I preserve and protect a woman's right to choose, I make an unequivocal answer, yes.
Romney on Wednesday. Quote, "The nation's highest court reaffirmed the value of life in America by upholding a ban on a practice that offends basic human decency." According to a CBS News poll, a majority of Americans think abortion should be legal in some cases, but most agree with the court's ruling on so-called partial birth abortion. Only about 2,500 of these out of more than 1 million abortions are performed every year, but the impact of the ruling could be much wider.
This will create a new wave of activity across the country in terms of pro-life legislation.
Just hours after the decision, Alabama lawmakers introduced a new bill that would ban most abortions. And South Dakota's legislature is expected to follow suit soon. Restrictive state laws are likely to energize abortion rights supporters.
I think women are going to say enough is enough, and that they understand that elections do matter.
Expect the rhetoric on both sides to heat up. The abortion rights debate is back on the front burner. Michelle Miller, CBS News, New York.
And just ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, campus alerts, weighing what's more important, scholarship or security. Hearing about the tragedy at Virginia Tech, how many of you called your college-age daughter or son just to tell them you love them? Sending your children off to college is tough enough. Now worrying more than ever about their safety is an added weight. Here's Sandra Hughes.
90% of freshmen live on campus.
Rich Suddick and his daughter Kara were touring Loyola Marymount University west of downtown Los Angeles just days after the Virginia Tech massacre.
We're sending our daughter away, far away to a new town and a new place, and she's never had to worry about keeping things locked, and so yeah, security is a big issue.
Parents like Suddick, who were already worried about sending their teenagers off to live on their own for the first time, now have the additional burden of those horrific images burned into their memories.
When your little girl's going away to college, what went through your mind?
Oh, just would I send her or not? I mean, it's just horrendous.
That was Karen Butterfield's immediate reaction, but by later in the week, she had calmed down. So had her daughter Brianna.
I don't know if it will necessarily hinder my decision, but I think it will play a part in what we ask.
Here at Loyola Marymount, in addition to the blue light alarms, which will bring immediate emergency response, the school also has an email alert system and 39 cameras monitoring the campus round the clock.
This is a test of our emergency notification system.
And just Friday, they upped the security ante, putting online a new emergency communication system earlier than expected because of the Virginia Tech shooting.
It became clear that it would give our community and our constituents a great deal of comfort to know that the system was live and operational.
Now, school officials can communicate with students by text message or voice message directly onto their cell phones.
We need to be able to provide tools that work with what they're used to and what they know how to use.
You swipe your card to get into the building, you swipe your card to get into your hall. That may seem like a lot, but it's safe. Nobody's getting in that shouldn't be in.
You can't really rank anything above security. I mean, if she goes away and she's not safe, it doesn't matter what the academic environment is.
This week, many parents and students might agree that nothing is more important than security. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Westchester, California.
Coming up on tonight's CBS Evening News, a question of class. Is chewing gum the reason a royal romance came unstuck? In Britain, today may be the Queen's birthday, but the country's media is still focusing on the end of the royal romance between her grandson, Prince William, and commoner Kate Middleton. Was there a reason for the breakup? Was it the gum? Here's Sheila McVicker.
As the guns marked Queen Elizabeth's 81st birthday, she could be reflecting on how much her country has changed. She could also be thinking about how much it remains fixed in the past, obsessed by breeding and accents. Take that royal breakup, the relationship of the Queen's grandson William and his future Princess Kate Middleton, foundering on the hidden shoals of class. Peter York is a cultural commentator.
People in Prince William's friendship group, who are a very rich boy, knockabout, fun-loving, club-going, not very intellectual group of people with very definite prejudices, thought that Miss Middleton was too middle class.
Not to mention her mother, the tabloids sneered, a former flight attendant who built a multi-million-dollar business and had the bad form and bad luck to be videoed chewing gum at a royal event. Simply not done.
You know, is a kind of old teenage rebellion, I don't care kind of thing to do. So some sort of sixth sense should have told her, maybe not.
There is nothing Britain's chattering class is like chattering about more than class. Who has it, who doesn't, and who might one day be fit to live in that palace. This is, after all, a country where some very posh people think that these tomatoes, however you pronounce it, are simply too common to have a place in their kitchens. It's back to the days of Henry Higgins and Eliza Doolittle, where everyone had a place and knew it.
You see this creature with her curbstone English, the English that'll keep her in the gutter till the end of her days?
Here, there is nothing that gives class away faster than language. Never say toilet instead of lavatory. Never say pardon, say what? And heaven forbid.
When Mrs. Middleton, Kate's mother, met the Queen, she said, "Pleased to meet you." Now, there's nothing intrinsically wrong in that, except it categorizes you as from a certain social background.
If not Kate, what future bride for William? Likely someone, say the commentators, with a double-barreled hyphenated last name and a pedigree as long as the prince's. Back to the future. Sheila McVicker, CBS News, London.
Or a big hat. We'll be back. Well, what a difference a week makes. Last weekend, a terrible storm. Tonight, some images of the glorious spring weather across much of the country. Tomorrow, on Sunday morning, I'll introduce you to Rachel Carson, the mother of modern environmentalism. I'm Thalia, Assuras, CBS News in New York. Good night, everyone.